Hello. I'm going to tell you a story. Around about the year 1858, the town of Lourdes in southern France became very important to Roman Catholics. It became a place of pilgrimage, a place for people to visit, and people started visiting the town in large numbers. And because of this, it was decided that some of the caves around the town would have to be cleared out and made into chapels where people could go to worship and go to pray. And to clear the caves out, to make them big enough to fit lots of people in, they had to dig out the floors of the caves. They had to get rid of all the soil and the floors of the caves, and they used the soil to make paths to go up to the cave, and they used the soil for gardens to decorate the area around the caves. And it was only some years later, when people started looking in this soil, that they realised there were some rather unusual things in there. They were finding bits of old tools and bits of bone and things that had been carved. And they realised some years later that these caves must have been used by Stone Age people many thousands of years ago. And an archaeologist turned up about 30 years later in the 1880s and started looking very carefully in the caves, and he found a small crack in the rock where some of the soil hadn't been scraped away, hadn't been removed. It was there as it had been many thousands of years ago. And when he looked closely in the soil and started digging it out very carefully, he found a carving of a horse. Now, this is a copy of the carving. The real one is in a museum. It's very precious and it's in a museum in France. But this one is a copy. You can see it's got a little metal spike in it and a plastic base, so you know that it's got modern materials. But it's a life-size copy of the carving that was found in that cave near Lourdes. And it's known as the Horse of Lourdes. The Lord Horse, or the Horse of Lourdes. If you look carefully at it, you can see its mane is on the top there, and you can even, if you turn it round, you can still see his eyes and his muzzle and his mouth. You can see his complete face, and there's its tail. Now, it's only got one complete leg. The other legs have broken off many thousands of years ago, so we don't know what it was used for. We don't know if it was meant to be a toy, or maybe it was something that was used for a ceremony. Maybe it decorated something else. Maybe it had a base, or it was part of a bigger thing. We're never going to know that. But what is also interesting about it, if you look, is that the person who made it has used lines that were in the material that it was made from to look almost as if the horse is running, as if the horse is going very fast. So imagine it running across, running, and those lines helping it look like it's actually moving quickly. Now, those lines were there in the material before the horse was made, but the artist very skillfully thought, oh, that piece of material there, that's got those lines in, so I can use that to make that horse look like it's running or it's moving incredibly quickly. So we know that horses were important to Stone Age people because you see a lot of horses drawn in cave art, and horses in the old Stone Age weren't the same to people then as they are to people now, but they didn't use horses to ride on. Horses weren't tame, they were wild. They didn't use horses to pull carts or anything like that. Horses were hunted in the old Stone Age, but we know they were important because of all the drawings and the carvings they've done. Now, this isn't the only carving that was found at Lourdes. They found another carving of the face of a horse, which you can see in the picture here. And if you look carefully at that picture, you might notice something. You notice that little carved face of the horse has got a little hole in the top of it, and that gave them a bit of a clue about what it was all about, because in another place 18 faces like that were found, faces of deer, and those faces also had little holes in them. So they think that those faces, those little carved faces, might have been part of a necklace or part of something that could have been sewn on your clothing, almost like a little badge or something like that to say which group of people you belong to, a decoration. And finally, they also, at Lourdes, they also found a carving of a doe, a deer, a female deer. And again, you can see that there. So Lourdes became important. Many people have visited the town ever since. But it was also a place, many thousands of years ago, where people made important carvings like this. One final mystery. For many years people thought that this little horse was carved from mammoth ivory, because many other carvings have been found in that area made from mammoth ivory. But recently somebody took a closer look at it just a few years ago and found that in fact it wasn't mammoth ivory, it was actually whale bone, the bone of a whale. Now Lourdes is a fair distance from the sea. The nearest place you're going to find a whale in the Stone Age is on a beach. So that gives us some important clues about the Stone Age, because it shows us that the people, although we know Stone Age people travelled long distances when they were following herds of animal, it also shows us that people who lived nearer to the sea might have traded things with the people who lived further inland, away from the sea. So people who could get hold of whale bones might have traded them and swapped them with people who could get hold of things like antler or animal skins. So a bit like people today swap things. Perhaps you've swapped cards with other people in school or things like that. So we know that Stone Age people weren't very different to us, and that when they needed something that they hadn't got, they might trade for it with somebody else. So that little horse there has given us a number of clues about the way people used to live in the Stone Age. And if you look in the book Stone Age Boy, although you can't see the horse, the complete horse, if you look carefully on one of the pages you can see the face of the horse that I showed you earlier, although the drawing is a little bit scratchy, done in a bit of a hurry, so it's not an easy one to spot. Have a look anyway. It's a good book, it's always worth reading.